The lights inside the America's Got Talent studio burned bright, casting a golden glow across the massive stage. The audience hummed with excitement, murmuring, laughing, waiting for the next act that would either surprise or disappoint. The air was thick with anticipation, every heart inside the theater was tuned to the rhythm of the unknown. A small boy stood just beyond the curtain, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched the silver cross that hung around his neck. He was barefoot, his jeans torn at the knees, and his shirt, though clean, was faded from too many washes. His name was Eli Cruz, a 12-year-old Filipino Christian boy who had never been on an airplane before, never seen America, and never imagined that his voice would one day silence millions. He had come from the outskirts of Cebu, from a place where the streets filled with music even when there was no food on the table. His mother worked nights at a small bakery, and his father, once a guitarist in a church band, had passed away 2 years ago. Eli had grown up listening to his father's songs about faith, love, and the eternal fight between light and darkness. It was his father who told him that music could be both a blessing and a curse. And it was also his father who warned him never to sing a certain song, a song he called the devil's lullaby. But fate has a strange way of testing souls. Months before his audition, Eli had found an old notebook in a box of his father's things. Inside, he saw lyrics written in his father's handwriting. At the bottom of one page, the words read, "Song the devil wrote, never sing." But when Eli read the lyrics, they didn't sound evil to him. They were beautiful, haunting, almost pleading, like a lost soul begging for light. And that melody, it came to him one night in a dream. He woke up humming it, tears in his eyes, feeling something powerful and painful in his chest. So when America's Got Talent opened auditions in Manila, Eli's mother borrowed money to buy a bus ticket. "Sing something that will make your father proud," she told him. He nodded. He didn't tell her which song he'd chosen. He couldn't explain why, but something deep inside told him he had to sing that song. The one his father never wanted him to sing. The one the devil, perhaps, had written. Now, standing on the AGT stage, Eli took a deep breath. Terry Crews smiled at him from the side. "You nervous, young man?" Terry asked, bending down a bit. Eli's lips quivered. "A little," he whispered. "But I prayed before coming here." Terry placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Then you've got all the strength you need." The music stopped. The crowd quieted. The stage manager gave the cue, and the massive curtain lifted. The lights hit Eli's face, blinding him for a moment. He squinted, trying to see through the brightness. Before him sat the judges, Simon Cowell, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel. Simon leaned back in his chair, pen in hand, studying the boy like he was reading a mystery. "What's your name?" Simon asked. "My name is Eli Cruz," the boy said softly, his accent lilting but clear. "Where are you from?" "I'm from the Philippines." Simon smiled faintly. "How old are you, Eli?" 12. "And what are you going to do for us today?" "I'm going to sing a song," he said, swallowing hard, "a song called The Song the Devil Wrote." The audience chuckled nervously. Sophia tilted her head. "That's a strange title," she said. "Who wrote it?" Eli hesitated. "My father. He said it was written by the devil." The room went silent. Simon's eyes narrowed, intrigued. "And why would you sing that?" Eli looked down at the cross hanging from his neck. "Because I believe every soul, even the darkest one, can be redeemed through love and light." That answer drew murmurs from the crowd. Simon tapped his pen against his notepad, his expression unreadable. "All right," he said finally. "Good luck, Eli." The music began, soft piano keys echoing like whispers from another world. The melody was slow, sorrowful, almost holy in its sadness. Eli's voice rose, gentle and trembling at first. It carried a purity that seemed to cut through the noise of the room. Every note held emotion, every word was carved from pain and hope. He sang, "Once there was light, and I turned away. Lost in the fire I built that day. Now I wander through shadows and flame, calling for mercy, calling his name." The audience froze. The lyrics were dark but poetic. As he sang, his voice grew stronger, fuller, resonating through the vast hall like a hymn of repentance. The lights dimmed, and a faint red hue glowed behind him, making it seem as though he was standing between heaven and hell. Simon Cowell leaned forward, his eyes locked on the boy. It was rare, almost unheard of, for Simon to be speechless. But something about Eli's voice was not normal. It was too pure, too powerful, like it carried something divine, and something dangerous. As Eli reached the chorus, the entire studio seemed to hold its breath. Take my song, O Lord of Light. Break my chains, end my fight. If the devil wrote these lines in pain, let your love rewrite my name. The power in his voice shook the room. Heidi Klum covered her mouth, her eyes glistening with tears. Sophia crossed herself silently. Howie leaned toward Simon, whispering, "Do you feel that?" Simon didn't answer. His gaze was fixed, his face pale, almost as if he couldn't move. The lights flickered slightly, once, twice. A gust of air seemed to pass through the audience even though no one had moved. Eli's small frame stood steady, his eyes closed, his hands raised slightly as he sang the bridge of the song. His voice broke once, but that imperfection made it even more real, more human. When the final verse came, he sang it in a whisper, like a prayer. Let me sing not for fame, not for gold, but for the souls that the night still holds. If evil can sing, then so can grace. Let every song bring you to this place. As the last note faded, there was silence, complete, reverent silence. The kind that only happens when something transcendent has just occurred. Eli lowered his head, the piano stopped. The audience didn't clap right away. They didn't know how to. It felt like clapping would break something sacred. Then, slowly, one person stood. Then another. Then hundreds. A wave of applause rolled through the theater. People were crying openly. Some raised their hands as if in church. Eli looked up, dazed, tears streaming down his face. Simon Cowell still hadn't moved. His pen had fallen from his hand. He blinked, as though waking from a trance. Eli Cruz looked at him from backstage, confused. It wasn't often Simon froze like that. Finally, Simon leaned toward the microphone. His voice was quieter than usual. Eli, he said, that was not just a song. That was something else. I don't know what just happened on this stage, but I felt every word. I've judged thousands of performances, but I've never heard anything like this. Ever. The crowd erupted again, cheering, shouting Eli's name. Sophia wiped her eyes. You made me cry, she said. And I don't even understand how a song that dark could feel so full of light. Heidi added softly, you reminded us that music has the power to heal even the things we fear most. Howie nodded. That was the most moving performance I've seen in years. You're not just a singer, Eli. You're a messenger. Simon leaned back, exhaling. You said your father called it the song the devil wrote. I don't know if that's true, but after hearing you, I think you just took that song away from him. The crowd cheered wildly. Tears streamed down Eli's cheeks as he whispered, thank you, sir. Simon pressed the golden buzzer. The sound echoed like thunder. Gold confetti exploded from the ceiling, falling around Eli like a shower of light. He covered his face, crying uncontrollably as Eli Cruz ran out to hug him. The audience stood, chanting his name, Eli, Eli, Eli. That moment went viral across the world. Within hours, millions of people had shared the video, the Filipino Christian boy who redeemed the devil's song. Churches played it during Sunday services. Atheists called it art. Believers called it a miracle. Even music critics admitted that something unexplainable had happened that night. But for Eli, it wasn't about fame. After the show, backstage, he sat quietly with his mother. She had flown in after hearing the news of his audition. When she saw the Golden Buzzer video on YouTube, she fainted in her bakery. Now, sitting beside her son, she asked gently, why did you sing that song? Eli looked down. Because I wanted to finish what Papa started, he said. He wrote that song when he lost his faith. I wanted to bring it back to the light. She hugged him tightly. And you did, Anik. You did. Days later, news outlets began digging into the song's origin. Reporters found that Eli's father had indeed written it years ago, during a time when he was struggling with depression and guilt after leaving his church band. The lyrics had been inspired by his belief that evil had stolen his gift, that music, once meant to glorify God, had been twisted by the world. Before he died, he wrote in his diary that he hoped someone pure would one day sing it with love instead of fear. That someone was his son. Eli's next performance on AGT was even more stunning. He sang an original gospel ballad titled, Redeemer's Flame. His voice had matured slightly, but it was still angelic. Simon, once known for being harsh, spoke softly after the performance. You are living proof, he said, that light always finds a way through darkness. As the competition went on, Eli became a global symbol of hope. People who had lost faith found themselves praying again. Letters poured in from soldiers, prisoners, and parents who said his music changed their lives. One letter came from a man who claimed he was once a Satanist. "When I heard that song," he wrote, "I cried for the first time in 30 years. I don't know if I believe in God yet, but I believe in you." Eli read that letter every night before sleeping. In the finale, he was the youngest contestant left. The world watched as he stepped onto the stage once more, barefoot again, his cross shining under the lights. Simon smiled at him before the performance began. "No matter what happens tonight," Simon said, "you've already won something much bigger than this show." Eli nodded. The music started. He sang, "Hallelujah," but with his own verses woven in, verses about forgiveness, faith, and his Father. His voice filled the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. People wept openly, holding their loved ones. Simon, once again, had no words. When the winner was announced, the crowd roared his name. Eli Cruz, the boy who sang the Devil's Song and turned it into a prayer, had won America's Got Talent 2025. After the show, Simon called him backstage. The cameras caught the moment, Simon sitting with Eli, both emotional. "You know," Simon said, "I don't cry often. But you made me cry twice. What you did with that song, it wasn't just talent. It was truth." Eli smiled shyly. "I didn't mean to make you cry, sir." Simon chuckled. "Sometimes, that's exactly what we need." Months later, Eli returned to the Philippines as a hero. His hometown welcomed him with banners, music, and tears. But he didn't act like a celebrity. Instead, he visited his father's grave. The cameras followed him, but he didn't speak to them. He knelt before the tombstone, laid his golden buzzer medal on it, and whispered, "Papa, your song is free now." The world never forgot that moment. Even years later, people still talked about the night the Filipino boy made Simon Cowell freeze, the night faith met music, and darkness turned to light. But there was one more part of the story that few knew. During an interview months later, Simon was asked what he felt during that first performance, why he froze. He paused for a long time before answering. "It's hard to explain," he said. "When he sang, I felt something, like time stopped. I don't know if it was fear or awe. But for a moment, I wasn't judging a performance. I was witnessing something sacred." Eli, now older, would later say that every time he sang that song, he felt his father beside him. "It's not the Devil's Song anymore," he told one reporter. "It's God's song now, and maybe that's the real miracle. Not that a young boy won a talent show, but that he took something once meant for darkness and turned it into light." Because sometimes, the greatest battles are not fought with swords or fame, but with songs sung by trembling voices that believe in redemption. And on that stage, in 2025, a barefoot boy from the slums of Cebu showed the entire world that even a melody once written in darkness can become a hymn of hope. When people look back on that season of America's Got Talent, they don't just remember the confetti or the standing ovations. They remember the silence, the sacred, breathless silence after the last note faded. They remember Simon Cowell's stillness, the way his eyes glistened, the way his voice cracked when he finally spoke. They remember a little boy with a cross around his neck who dared to sing what others feared to hear. Years later, Eli would record that same song, the song the devil wrote, as part of his first album. But in the studio version, the last line was new. He added a verse his father never wrote. "And when the devil's song is done, let love be louder than the sun." That verse became the anthem for millions. Churches across the world sang it as part of worship. Schools performed it at graduations. Even non-believers admitted that it carried a kind of peace. Eli never chased fame after that. He used his earnings to build a small foundation for children who wanted to sing but couldn't afford lessons. He called it Light Notes. His mission was simple: to teach kids that music wasn't about winning, it was about healing. In an interview, he once said, "When you sing from your heart, you fight darkness, not just in the world, but inside yourself." I learned that from my father's song. And that was the legacy of a boy who walked onto the AGT stage trembling and walked off holding the light of the world in his voice. For Simon Cowell, that night changed something too. In a later interview, he admitted that Eli's performance was one of the only times in his career that he felt truly speechless. "It reminded me," Simon said, "that talent isn't just about skill. It's about spirit. That boy had something I can't define, and maybe I don't need to." In every replay of that audition, you can still see it, the way the lights shimmered, the way Eli's voice soared, and the way Simon froze for those few precious seconds, staring in awe. It wasn't just entertainment, It was revelation. Even today, when fans watch the video online, many comment that they feel chills, or tears without knowing why. Some say the song feels like a battle between heaven and hell. Others say it feels like home. But everyone agrees on one thing: it changed them. And that's how legends are born, not from fame, but from faith. Not from noise, but from silence that follows truth. Eli Cruz didn't just sing a song the devil wrote. He sang it so beautifully that even the devil himself, if he had been listening, might have wept. And somewhere, beyond the bright lights of the AGT stage, his father must have smiled, proud, redeemed, and finally at peace. Because in that voice, in that faith, and in that song, heaven had finally answered the devil's melody with love.